An arm is merely a decoration, the act of applause is an acclamation of the soul. This line is something Todo said during his fight with Mahito, and funnily enough, Mahito also controls and manipulates the soul. But we'll circle back around to Todo and how he fits into all of this just in a little second here. But get ready, it's time to put on your tinfoil hats, and I'm gonna cook up some crazy crackpot theory for you right now. In the recent chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen in 222, a lot of people have speculated the reveal of Yuji's curse technique, and that technique is something that allows Yuji to switch body or souls with his opponents. And in my most recent review, I do talk about this, and I did say how I didn't see the connection in the panels that have been pointing this out seemingly. However, what I did like is the theory overall, because it's something that JJK has sort of laid down the groundwork for. And I've always said that if Yuji was to get a power-up or a curse technique, it better not be an arsehole and come out of nowhere. But this one, I actually like it, and it's kind of viable. Probably a lot of you may not have noticed all of this groundwork. In this video, I'm going to go around and point it all out for you. The subject of souls in Jujutsu Kaisen is something that has been at the forefront of interest within the community for a long time now, and for good reason. They are constantly being brought up. Souls are always there, and in fact, for the most part of like the first 100 chapters, Mahito's seemingly entire purpose was to try and unravel that same mystery that is the souls in Jujutsu Kaisen. But where does Yuji and his so-called body soul swap technique fit into this? Let me explain. Yuji, as we know, was a vessel of Sukuna right from chapter 1 right the way through until chapter 212. And during this time, two things that were said caught the attention of everyone, but have laid low, and only one of those things has been wrapped up. And the first was Yuji's binding vow with Sukuna, the Enchain moment, which back in chapter 11 was established, and we saw it come full circle in chapter 212, arguably one of the greatest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen in my humble opinion. But then the second thing that got said after this was literally in the next chapter of chapter 12, of Gojo thinking to himself of how Yuji's body will eventually learn Sukuna's curse technique way back in chapter 12. And since then, JJK has brought the Sukuna chain binding vow full circle, but we are now starting to see the hints of Gojo's prediction now coming true. But that leaves the question of what is Sukuna's actual curse technique? For as far as we're aware, Sukuna's primary curse technique was cleave and dismantle, and it was then revealed that he had a fire technique which he used against Jogo, and he's now in the possession of the 10 Shadows technique, now having taken over Megami's body. Well, how did he take over Megami's body? That's what I want to dive into here. Once he enacted upon the binding vow of the Enchain moment, Sukuna seemingly poured all of his soul and cursed energy into the pinky finger of Yuji before tearing that bad boy off and using it as a chicken tender, force feeding it to Megami and taking over his body. And if there's one thing that we know as a fact, is that Sukuna has been around for a very long time now, and we also know that bodies in Jujutsu Kaisen age. No matter how strong you are in Jujutsu Kaisen, time still marches on, hence why Kenjaku has moved bodies now multiple times, hence why Gaku Ganji looks like a literal skeleton. Like, that dude looks like Prince Charles before he fucking passed away. Like, he looks like a literal fucking skeleton. This is also why Sukuna was literally mummified, and he managed to transfer his soul into 20 fingers that were scattered around the place until Yuji eventually found them. Now, you might be sat there catching my drift, but you also might not be catching my drift, so let me paint you a picture. Kenjaku is someone who we know who has moved bodies multiple times now, and with this he is seemingly able to take the technique of the previous body, which was theorized and later confirmed by Yuki, who was also conveniently studying the soul. And we know Kenjaku is basically just a mad scientist who has been around for an extremely long time now, and for some reason he was trying to create a cursed womb death patterns, and this is how Yuji came to exist. And we know Kenjaku swaps bodies by switching his brain out for theirs. But what if Kenjaku learned how Sukuna originally swapped bodies and was trying to replicate that same technique? However, he couldn't quite master it, and instead ended up basically becoming a hermit brain floating between body shells, whereas Sukuna had actually mastered this technique and was able to swap bodies forcefully and even take the previous body's technique with him into the new vessel. Hence why he's now shown us 3 separate techniques: cleave and dismantle, the fire arrow which he used against Jogo, and the Maharaga, and now the 10 Shadows technique, all encased within the shrine. And now that Yuji has basically been soaked in his cursed energy for so long, he's basically learned how to use this technique of soul and body swapping, and we've basically seen this in this latest chapter. Now, if you've got this far into the video and you're probably wondering how Todo fits into this picture, I'll tell you now. Todo was one of the people who basically taught Yuji how to properly control his cursed energy, and during their fight in the Goodwill arc with Hanami as well as each other, he basically even coached Yuji to hitting multiple black flashes through the manipulation of his cursed energy here, and these two created a bond with each other in which Todo ended up believing Yuji was his brother, and somehow Yuji appeared in his memories, and the same thing happened to Choso, with Yuji all of a sudden appearing in his memories after Choso had beaten him. And off the back of Yuji's seemingly new soul swapping technique, I would be inclined to believe that this is actually a partial effect of Yuji's technique and he wasn't quite aware of it at that time. The entire fighting point of Yuji in the first half of the series was Yuji's ability to house and basically control the soul of Sukuna, and also how he was able to be the perfect opponent for Mahito, someone whose power also manipulates the soul. And I believe through Todo and Mahito, Yuji subconsciously learned more about himself, and he'd realized that until he hit the point of, I am you, which was something that he said to Mahito, which at first seemed completely and utterly random at the time, but knowing what Yuji's curse technique may be now as we are at the current present time, it's something that actually makes a lot of sense. There's been a ridiculous amount of videos, essays and tweets and Reddit theories about how Yuji and Mahito were basically the opposite of each other in many ways in their ideals and how they fight and how they interact with each other and everyone else. But Yuji saying I am you made no sense unless at this point Yuji had an inkling of what his technique could be, or was starting to understand his own soul as well as Sukuna's and this potential technique. It could be the fact that he never fully understood it until he read the book that Yuki Tsukumo had written about the soul that Choso had handed him, helping him understand all these moments that he's gone through right the way throughout the series, why he was able to house Sukuna's soul while he was able to suppress it, how his memories somehow implanted into Choso and Todo's brain. All of these moments could be a direct result of this curse technique that he'd absorbed through the house and Sukuna. If my theory is correct, every time Yuji swaps soul with someone, he could possibly take their technique when he switches back. Personally, I would like to see Yuji use this technique in a similar way to how Todo uses Boogie Woogie, with a clap of his hand or maybe even clapping on someone else to trigger the swap. And that's why I think Todo is the earliest key as to why Yuji's possible technique is the soul swapping technique. And I'm aware, yes, this is a absolute crazy crackpot theory, or I feel like the earlier moments in the series and how this technique is somehow coming about now are really going to show themselves, and I feel like a lot of this may come out in a potential little flashback moment for the next couple of chapters going forward. Okay, class, you are dismissed. You may all take off your tinfoil hats right now because I'm done cooking with the crackpot theory. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, and also don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this. And as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.